probably Germany did not wish to grow into its current role as a balancer of the euro currency, but in fact, Germany is most of the time regarded to be so nowadays. And at the same time, this has often been criticized as a kind of German hegemony in Europe. I think we have to bear in mind probably these very fundamental developments during the last 25 years before we approach the debate about the future of Europe. So this probably has, a short and brief remark before we start. And just let me probably add another suggestions on how we are going to proceed tonight, in addition to what you've already said in Thessaloniki. We will have a discussion organized in 3 sections. Section 1, we will have a speaker, first of all, Konstantin Schüssler here in Mainz, and we will have Stavros Karakasides in Thessaloniki. And then we will have a second section which will be organized in the same sense. So mirrored, we will have a speech by Nikos Francis, and we'll have a speech by Malte Kilian. And afterwards, in the third section, we will have a question and answers period, which is about to last about 30 minutes. And we would like to invite you all, both the discussion participants as well as you all in the audience, to think about questions you would like to ask later on during our questions and answers section.
The video link has been activated early, so I don't want to double welcomes once more. Just to say Kalispera and welcome heartfully here in Thessaloniki as well as in Mainz to this second live debate organized by the Adenauer Foundation and IDEA, the International Debate Education Association. Greece and Germany have dominated each other's headlines in the last years, not always in the most positive way. With this debate format, the aim is to tackle the fact that polarized, uninformed populist opinions tend to turn the citizens of one country against each other, while there's very little interaction between politics or society of the two countries together. Not so tonight. So without further ado, Andreas Lutsch already made the line out of the content tonight. I'm very happy to hear your arguments pro and contra, coming from Greece as well as Germany, through the gift of hopefully functioning, miraculous technical facilities. I'm looking forward to this debate tonight, your arguments, your questions, and a fruitful Greek-German debate without borders. Thank you very much for your interest in coming here tonight. Thank you.
Welcome first to you, Mainz.
So I will have the pleasure now to introduce to you Konstantin Schüssler. Konstantin Schüssler was born in 1986 and he studied European Studies at Maastricht University first, and then headed on to Scotland to graduate in International Security Studies at the University of St Andrews. And now he's working as a junior client executive with Burson Marsteller company in Frankfurt am Main. And I'm happy that he's with us tonight and will present his first paper here, Defending Political Union.
Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear participants and moderators, allow me to open my address to you with a quote. The award from the Nobel Committee shows that in these difficult times, the European Union remains an inspiration for countries and people all over the world. That the international community held together by military force, but the rule of law and fundamental rights for nearly 500 million citizens. After all that has been achieved, Europe now has the chance to develop even further into a strong political union. For this, we need to be more united than ever. These are the words of Vice President Viviane Reding, and somehow they mirror a vision of a federal Europe that Jean Monnet, the architect of European integration, had in mind as his ultimate goal for Europe. Nonetheless, let us take a look at the current situation. More than ever, the Euro crisis has triggered an important and necessary debate about the future of the EU and which directions Europeans want to take the Union. Shall we remain a trade bloc, or shall we proceed to become a strong, unified political union supported by the national governments and, more importantly, supported by us, the citizens? at Maastricht, revived after the frustration of the Nice Treaty and died after the convention, is now back. Once again, the finalité politique, the final state of integration into Europe, is now propelled by centrifugal forces inside the European Union. So who are these forces? Many European leaders are these forces, and they stated their opinion of the idea of a political union, and it's worth recalling what they said and where they stand on this issue. Let me begin with Council President Van Rompuy's report, which clearly engaged with the position of the finalité of the European project. This report serves not only as a blueprint for future European debates, but also for the conclusions of the December 2012 European Council. In September 2012, Commission President José Manuel Barroso said in the State of the Union address that eventually the European Union will become a federation of nation-states. So Barroso said in detail that he believes the political union must be our political horizon. This is not just a demand of a passionate European, but this is an indispensable way forward to consolidate our progress and assure the future. Also, in 2012, Chancellor Merkel said that the European Union needs a political union, even if this means that some countries are integrating much faster than others, so highlighting to a two-speed Europe. Hence Merkel called for more Europe, including a budgetary union, saying we need a political union first and foremost to follow everything afterwards. Moreover, and more interesting, Merkel took up Monnet's approach, who relies on an incremental approach step by step to form and give up more competences to Europe and to allow Europe to gain more powers of control. And quite recently, in May this year, French President Hollande called for pursuing the road to establish a political union in order to foster the recovery of the concurrent crisis and allow Europe to regain its strength, especially in economic and financial terms. So, as we can conclude from all these statements, European leaders are actually willing to debate what's paramount and actually to pursue the road down to a political union. A political union is difficult to define. Demonstrate the whole world what a powerful, democratically elected, backed system can provide for each one of the citizens. The very reason the Nobel Committee Prize motivation reads as follows: for over 6 decades, the European Union contributed to the advancement of peace and reconciliation, democracy, and human rights in Europe. It is actually this acknowledgement that shall assure European politicians, European citizens, and more importantly, its skepticism, that political union can manifest in these achievements well into the future of our lives and the lives of our children. So, if a political union is generally pursued, from what form it can or shall take, a very prominent idea is to create the United States of Europe according to the US constitutional model. Might be best done by turning the Union into the United States of Europe. As in the US, there would be a two-chamber system. The European model would have a durable political union with a strong government, the Commission, and two chambers. So, a European Parliament and kind of a European Senate of member states, as you know. This European government must be accountable and directly elected by the European citizens. The heads of the European government should be elected by the European Parliament, which represent all EU citizens. I believe the move towards more Europe is not only necessary, it's more importantly doable, and it's democratically feasible. However, one has to be realistic about working things, just as a more common economic governance, a strongly centralized EU fiscal authority, and substantially improved democratic legitimacy for the European Union. Also, despite the lofty words and vague vision of European high-profile politicians that we just heard, the reality is that policy harmonization will be pursued step by step, so we need an incremental approach that will be a relatively slow process, but it can be fruitful in the end. Instead of a political union, it might be better to speak of deepening cooperation, at least for the time being. The idea of United States of Europe is always a dream of a united and peaceful Europe that had suffered from 30 years of war, misery, and turmoil. For some of the founding fathers, it has been a vision to establish a political union which is based on democratic governance, which can provide peace, safety, and prosperity for each of the citizens. It will take us tremendous patience, determination, and planning to master the vague and conflicting ideas of what this political union might look like. But one thing is sure, creating an ever closer union between the people of Europe is a tough task worth fighting for. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank Thank you very much, Konstantin. Our next speaker will be Stratos Karakasides. He is a member of the Greek Association of Political Thought in Thessaloniki, I guess, but unfortunately, I'm in a position not to have a severe view. Probably you would just say a few words before we start with regards to your personal work. Introduction. Thank you.
Okay, dear audience, first of all, I'd like to thank you everyone to be here today, especially the organizers of this event. Okay, I strongly believe the perpetual discussion between European state members promotes a very basic idea of cooperation upon which the foundation of Europe have built and lived through. Today, we are 4 active citizens, each with a different viewpoint, will be debate over Europe's future. With regards to a strictly political union, after further consideration, we cannot believe that open, liberative cooperation would be ambiguous and strictly diplomatic. Let's begin with a look at the issue from a historical angle. It's common knowledge that the Second World War tasted Europe and the memories of general criminal activity among the both sides are still haunting the minds of European citizens. At any rate, many of them are still alive and unable to shake off the darkness. Moreover, the great European tradition, which is strongly based on the philosophy of dominant state nation, does not permit us to abolish the historical continuum while at the same time sacrifice the ethnic identity of each country member separately within a neutral federalistic union. Each country's very individual past is therefore connected to empires or kingdoms which are not willing to proceed in the making of a political union. Anyhow, politics of today is a result of yesterday's historical events. According to political standards, each country member of Europe produced more or less. As a result, each country inevitably served Europe in a different way. These multiple political differences affected the cooperation between the rest. By all means, each state member of Europe has different inspiration when it comes to international affairs and political strategies. These differences lead to creation of agendas or financial political interests which can also be self-contradicting. The structure of state policy is linked with the individual institutional country management. That's very interesting. And when the institutional management is different, then the scope of possible equal cooperation is definitely fragile and susceptible and with other completely. Let us now start commenting on the extra technical difficulties which standing in the way of political union. First of all, European ground is geographically vast and limits are regional and clear. Certain border lines do not yet belong geographically to Europe. A very obvious example is that Turkey or Western Russia. The larger countries have been continuously trying to join it, yet the answer of being fully ready to welcome them. We should also take account the great European citizens, the decision-making centers, and the already unfunctioned bureaucratic system of each country. According to my own way of thinking, the principal effect of Europe as a trade bloc would eventually stabilize the economic growth of each country member and Europe on the whole. Strong trade policy as a basic external strategy would case Europe the biggest trade partner among the highest economies of the world. Europe has vastly different experiences with regional trade and enjoyed varied levels of success. For example, Germany and Greece. With financial turmoil, which is unfortunately currently taking over Europe, regional trade bloc would offer opportunities to increase its growth as an independent continent with process of playing a vital role. In this way, Europe will be able to implement policies that until gradually reduce fiscal deficit and they help regain lost competitiveness. Regional trade is a powerful engine for growth in the region. Bottom line is that the creation of trade European bloc would take Europe out of the Great Depression. The trade blocs provide valuable lessons to help a middle-income country sustain growth in post-crisis period. And I have some examples here, but because of the time, and comes with a person stronger regional trade agreement and help from building blocks for a global free trade deal. Increased trade will not only help middle-income economies develop, but also drive growth around the world as the financial crisis recedes. Thank you.
Now I will take on the moderation of this second part. I won't bother you with a long introductory speech, just to sum up what we've heard so far. On the part supporting the political union, of course, the main argument is that the political union offers a vision for Europe, a vision for European member states and for European citizens. And this drive to move toward this vision is a main mobilizing force for Europe as a whole. On the other side, the main arguments, we've heard them, they tend to focus on the borders of this European house. Where does the European Union extend? Does it reach the borders of Iraq or the Urals? And on the other hand, we've heard an argument focusing on the gap between the citizens and the bureaucratic decision-making bodies in Brussels. So let us start the second part of this joint debate. I will give the floor to Nikos Vranzis. He's a young European, he is a member of the Young European Federalists. He's the vice president of the association. He will, of course, have an easier task for a Greek supporting the political union than a Greek supporting the trade union.
Okay. Let's start some bad news. A recent poll here in Greece showed that in the Euro elections of May, the percentage to vote stands at 25%. Another poll showed that 30% of the new Euro Parliament will be consisted of Eurosceptics, some of them more modest, others more extreme, but all capable to suck the European idea from inside. Lately, we observed a ghost hunting above Europe, the ghost of Euroscepticism and nationalism. I see a retreat of the European project due to the fact that Europe has created European problems for which cannot give European solutions. This difficult situation in Europe is precisely caused by the political immaturity and cowardice of those who just want Europe in the role of an economic bloc, in the role of a giant who does not move exactly the moment logic the markets, unable to create policy. So we have an incomplete political and economic system, unemployment rate in high level, citizens of a United States blaming each other for the fall. Europe is certainly not a federalistic union. What I'm saying is that it could face the difficulties easier if it could move towards this direction. Let me tell you what I see and what I suggest. Even if I was interested only in the financial aspect, I would surely have thought that a unified federalist Europe is the best choice. It's stronger, it is able to impose a policy that can tame the economy, to cope more easily to pressures of personal markets, heal wounds of the unemployment caused by unbridled competitiveness. The idea of union demands federalistic solutions, and the demand of democracy requires federalistic institutions. However, what I see is not so auspicious. I see nations that make up Europe to prefix their national interest in collective decision-making body. I see the EU Parliament, a directly elected body, remaining weak. This must be changed. Political institutions and leaders must decide without filters of national thinking. Europe must decide for Europe. Otherwise, it will remain hamstrung of economic interests served by the government of the fittest state. I see politicians speak only for numbers and competitiveness. Everybody, the left and the right, have made discounts. They have neutralized and homogenized politics. They are attached to the chariot of economy, and now politics is dragged by economy. And this makes citizens to turn to anti-systemic political spaces who weave a clear anti-European platform. They are unable to preface other priorities in order to demonstrate that policy is making the way to economy, and the economy follows, and not the opposite. I see the European citizen remaining a dream, a utopia, and that's because nobody undertakes to create it. Who has been taught European history? Who tried to show Europeans that they live in a present built by a common past? Who gave us to understand our shared cultural heritage? Ancient Greece, Reformations, Renaissance, Industrial Revolution, the Enlightenment, history that led us to today, reminding our common roots. And from all those things, nothing is economy. It is education, a common heritage, a European heritage that nobody knows. I see the modern European person as singular homo economicus, caring and supporting the idea of Europe only when he feels that this ensures prosperity. When his welfare is shaken, he returns to the powerful but also constructed identity of his state. It is this insistence on the economy destroying the idea of Europe, leading to conservatism in prevalence. Europe is incomplete, as well in political, institutional and economic level. Citizens see institutions not accountable to voters, such as the European Central Bank, dictated policies to elected prime ministers and parliaments, and that arising questions is reasonable. Which European government would transfer its powers, its national sovereignty, for the sake of financial institutions that are not accountable to anyone? One effect of this can be seen now, when austerity measures, for example in Greece and Ireland, demonstrate to people that the actual policies are imposed from elsewhere, from a level over which the national electorate has no direct influence and often not even much knowledge. This can entail a risk of evacuating democracy. Those who count so much this economic model of Europe, they retain this limbo situation, which inevitably leads to self-destruction. A more progressive political leadership must prevail in order to give a more progressive economic vision. And this cannot be achieved through coward functionalist initiatives, but through an ambitious federalistic vision. So, we want courageous politicians to end this value framework, to incise a federalist path, to deepen Europe's political structures, elected directly on the basis of European citizens, who will challenge the hegemony of this economic model, who will harness the impersonal economy. We don't want politicians that call themselves federalists, but behave and operate with the perception of the goal. We want a Spinelli, a De Gasperi, a Delors, that will put an end to this anti-European ambition of any and every Le Pen or Wilders. And as a naive person, I'm asking how a state itself can ensure the basics to its citizens against the pressure of international markets. Moreover, how can we reverse the situation as this? I'm 30 seconds. Moreover, how can we reserve the situation as this is currently configured in Europe, which creates such inconsistencies not only in the society, but also in communication, adhering to the idea of Europe as simply a trade bloc? Courageous politicians we want. People who would say something similar to what the great Altiero Spinelli used to say when he was asked about his nationality. He used to say, I'm a European who is coming from Italy. So, I'm a European who is coming from Greece. Thank you.
Thank you. To the time limitations, and then back to Mainz, giving the floor to Malte Kilian. He's a graduate from the Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz, and of course he will support the idea of the way towards a trade bloc and less Europe, I suppose.
Thank you, Thessaloniki. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear participants of the Greek-German live debate. The most important and most obvious success of European integration is of economic nature. From its beginning, the EU appeared as a key player in global economic policies. This is especially the case for international trade. Already in the treaties of Rome, the 6 founding EU member states agreed upon a common trade policy. Foreign trade was the very first field of international relations where sovereignty was shifted from member states to community level. In order to gain further stakes in economic policies, European trade policy, ever since aimed at implementing greater external and intra-EU trade liberalization. Measures such as the European Free Trade Association, the Single European Act that introduced the single market, including the free movement of goods, persons, services and capital, as well as the monetary union and the introduction of a single European currency, led to the removal of barriers to international trade and competition. Numerous bilateral and multilateral trade agreements between the EU and other states or blocs in the developed and developing countries further promoted and still promote the EU's economic interests in the global economy, recently underlined by negotiations on a transatlantic trade and investment partnership between the EU and the United States. The openness of its trade regime has meant that the EU is the biggest player on the global trading scene. Today, the European Union constitutes the world's largest internal market with a population of over 500 million consumers. Together, the European Union's member states account for 19%, or 1/5, of world imports and exports in goods and services. To put it in other words, the EU is the largest trading bloc in the world, surpassing the United States and China. Although the Treaty of Lisbon has made the EU more transparent, more efficient, and more democratic, we are far away from becoming a full-fledged political union. From my point of view, there are several unsurmountable obstacles that prevent the creation of a political union. First, member states are still reluctant to give up sovereignty, especially in fiscal policy, home and foreign affairs, and justice affairs. Second, people are reluctant to accept what is seen as a technocratic, non-democratic process that has failed to solve their problems. The Commission is neither a government nor a bureaucracy, and is appointed through an obscure procedure rather than elected by the people. The Council is the only legislature in the democratic world that makes decisions in secret. Overall, the EU seems to be too distant. Third, there are no European elections. Citizens are not able to vote on EU policies. There is no European party system. National elections are fought on domestic rather than European issues. The European Parliament elections are also not about Europe either, as parties and the media treat them as national second-order elections or national midterm contests. Fourth, Europe is not a nation.
Europe is a multi-ethnic society. Europeans do not speak one language and do not share one collective identity. And since the economic crisis, the trust in the European project declined dramatically. Besides these obstructions, the attempt to create a consolidated constitution for the European Union in 2004 that was brought to an end by French and Dutch voters in 2005. The fact that Ireland held 2 referendums in order to ratify the Lisbon Treaty, as well as the latest announcement of Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron to hold a public referendum on Britain's membership of the European Union, portray the creation of a political union in a rather unflattering light. By mentioning these points, I want to make clear that the EU, by now and in future, is, first and foremost, a trade bloc and far away from becoming a democratically legitimate political union. Trade is the engine of Europe's prosperity. The development of trade is an opportunity for economic growth and jobs by increasing the opportunities for trade and investments with the rest of the world. Trade creates a measurable output. It generates output legitimacy, legitimacy by results. The member states of the European Union share a single market, a single external border, and a single trade policy. The EU speaks with one voice in trade policy, but the EU speaks with different voices when it comes to create a political union. But opposing the idea of a European Federation on the one hand, and supporting economic integration on the other hand, however, is not necessarily contradictory. It's possible if we keep politics and economics as separate as possible. The depoliticization of policymaking is the price we pay in order to preserve national sovereignty largely intact. Let me therefore draw the conclusion that the EU would be well advised to skip the idealistic discussions about the finality and ultimate goals.
Questions from Mainz. Hello, Thessaloniki calling.
Yes, sir. I'm very sorry to tell you that we didn't understand all your questions, actually. So we would appreciate it if you could just wrap up the questions very briefly and tell us what the people wanted us to discuss here. So that's our first problem, and then I would say we will collect the questions here in Mainz. Is it possible?
Well, I will try. I will do my best. So we have one motion over realism. A gentleman here saying that we should not be over utopic about creating a political union, because the way forward is to focus on economic cooperation and economic common ground before we address political union. There was other questions focusing on the depth, that's what I understood, the depth of a free trade union. If I understood you well, have we realized our trade union internally within Europe before we can say we are a trade bloc? And then there was an interesting question over where we stand as opposed to a political union not taking enough into account and not accommodating the interests of less strong, economically strong members.
When it comes to public perception in both our countries, I know that in Germany, public perception of Europe right now is mostly not very much in favor. Germans thinking or being like, even as a trade bloc, this thing is not working out for you. And that is connected to issues, as the second speaker pointed out, of having no choice, of having no real democratic say in these things. How do you think, is it possible to even keep up a proper trade bloc if the public opinion is slowly turning against that?
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else here in Mainz? All right. Otherwise, I would take the liberty perhaps to ask a question by myself. So I would be interested to ask as well to Konstantin, as well to Mr. Francis, the question whether you think the European member states until nowadays had a clear strategy actually to pursue the track of European integration. And if one might be skeptical in this regard, there might be the question how to precisely pursue this track in future. So Konstantin emphasized the point that it's somewhat difficult to define precisely how to construct a European federal state. And I would be interested and I would like to invite you to probably substantiate your points on that. Thank you.
I think I should throw in a question myself. So, two gentlemen supporting the motion in favor of a stronger trade union rather than a political union. Of course, to my mind, this means less Europe than what we have right now. We have moved a long way towards political union, and monetary union is one step towards union. So, how do you address this issue that during the last, say, 10 years, but that's open to debate, the world has shrunk, so there's a need to have stronger world players, and that even when acting as one in terms of a trade union, you need to be supportive of this argument, these interests, also in a political way. You have one president of the European Commission supporting or fighting for the interests of Europe, and does the common the monetary union is not a step towards strengthening Europe as a world player. That would be my questions to those in support of a trade union. My question to those in support of a political union would be, how do we address the issue of the democratic deficit? How do we bring about this, which was outlined by the opponents of this proposition? How do we bring about this unified, or let's say federal political system where issues are dealt with in a common way, and which is not the case now, even though we have direct European elections since 1979, and it's not a unified political system. So let's, Andreas, if you're okay with this, let's get first answer of those in support of the trade union, and then we move to those in support of the political union. And start with, I think, Konstantin Schussler. No, I'm sorry, Malte Kilian.
I totally agree that the perception in Germany of the European Union is pretty low, especially in our generation. So I fully agree. But the trade bloc, when we look at the trade bloc, it generates a real outcome in terms of jobs, in terms of economic growth. So when we look at the trade bloc, I think there's this kind of output legitimacy that the European Union as a political union is missing. We have this output when we look at the trade bloc, but we don't have it when we look at the European Union as a political union. Because the European Union speaks with one voice, as I said, when it comes to trade policy. But it's hard to combine all the voices of the member states when it comes to the political union. So trade really produces an outcome that we can measure, that we far away from this point. So that's why I think that a trade bloc, that the perception of a trade bloc is not as bad as the perception of the European Union as a political union. So we should keep on by fostering this trade bloc. So this would be my answer to your question. And Second question from Thessaloniki. I would say that the EU members support trade because they have really there's something that there's an earning they have, like jobs and higher income, and you can see the Commission has a really strong voice when it comes to trade, and it's representing the EU in the WTO with a strong voice. And by now, the European Union is the strongest trade bloc in the world, and we should not jeopardize this achievement by talking about European Union as a political union where we have not a single opinion about it.
All right, thank you, Mario.
To keep it short.
Should we allow Stratos Karakasidis to follow up on this?
Personally, I totally support the opinion of Kilam because I think that Europe is the biggest trade bloc, and I'd like to say something about the region trade bloc because the biggest economies in Europe, like German, doesn't interest about the region. It focused to the personal trade.
So let's have the answers from the motion supporting the political union. Let's start from Nikos and then back to Mainz.
Okay. 4 questions, I think, huh? The first question about liberty and your question. Yes. I believe that liberty is not only the economical liberties. And I believe that you see, every day you see what inequalities this absolute economical freedom creates. And I believe that a European government could control this economical liberty. I'm not a friend of, as you described me as a guy who loves a government who controls the lives of its people. No, I believe that people should elect, European citizens should elect their government, and this government's role should be to control the economy. This was a question I expected about federalism, and let me answer. I have an opinion about European citizenship and the common past. I believe that Europe was built by people who understand the faults and the mistakes that led to World War I, World War II. And I'm a friend of Jürgen Habermas, who thinks that patriotism can be an institutional patriotism. Let me put it this way. The belief in ideas such as liberty, freedom, equality could create the space where we can live together. I don't think that federalism is against the uniqueness of every nation. About what was your question about the inequalities between the states, I think. Huh?
A political union does not accommodate the interests of the smaller states.
Okay. I think that federalism itself is an answer to this, because we don't think that nations are the main factors, the protagonists in making policy. But Europe must decide for Europe, and each country, each state should provide Europe with the essential, the things necessary to keep Europe going. The democratic deficit, federalism itself is also an answer to this, because we believe that there is this democratic deficit is a real fact, a true fact, and we want to create the structures, the institutional structures, in order to fight against this deficit, because, let's say, elected instruments, elected institutions from the base of Europe, from the Europe citizens. This is the answer. European citizens should elect directly the instruments, the politicians who lead the way for Europe. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I think Konstantin Schussler would like to add some more to this.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, I must say that regarding the questions concerning political union, Nico and I are probably on the same page, so I just add small stuff to what already has been said and outlined quite perfectly. Concerning the issue of liberty, I think this is one, if not the most important aspect that the European Union stands for and tries hard every day to somehow uphold and promote throughout the world. So I think that's one of the ideas probably with enlightenment that we actually can contribute to the world and should continue to do so. Concerning the second question, if smaller member states are accommodated within a federation, I think this has been one of the essence of the Kohl administration back in the days to say that Germany or the bigger member states should promote or at least give small member states a voice, and I think this perfectly worked out well under Kohl and his leadership in Europe, and this is what probably made him a great European. There has been, I think, one question about the common history and identity that Europe shares. I think Nico in a statement named all the most important points from ancient Greek to Enlightenment to Reformation whatsoever, and I think this actually, besides sadly all the wars that we fought between each other, it's definitely an essence that creates a European identity that everybody can relate in bigger or smaller parts of the world. The question that Andreas had for me, whether I think that the member states always have a clear strategic outline how to perceive European integration. I think even Germany, which is in France, which are always perceived as the motors of European integration, they had their arguments back in the days whether they should pursue or not. So I think it always depends on political leadership and the willingness, and this is actually the reason why I do believe vision to create a political union, this idealism is very much needed in order to just have more than, as Kilian perfectly said, I like to quote this, measurable output and results. So I think it takes a bit more than just being facts and numbers and have a vision, have a dream to basically achieve something and drive the integration process as such. Concerning the democratic deficit, it's definitely true that the European Union has, if you want to put it like that, a PR problem. So it's not well reputed. It did a lot of things that caused this bad image that it has, and which gets them exploited by Eurosceptics and nationalists and get Wilders and whatever these people are called. So I think on the other hand, it's important to stress that people actually must take the chance and really realize that they can do something about the European elections. They can voice their opinion. They could protest for European or pan-European issues within the nation state. So I think it's always up to the people to do something. If you don't like it, you can improve it. And I think there's a lot of potential along the road. So I'm very curious to see how it will work out in the upcoming European elections. And well, I think I answered all the questions. If there's something else, I'm happy to also answer further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Konstantin. Do you have any more questions? Should we throw in more ideas? Namely that, well, is the democratic deficit problem of Europe just a problem of PR, bad publicity, or is it possible to bring the European citizen closer to a system, a decision-making system that produces effects very slowly? This is the European political system. It takes decisions very, very slowly. For propositions from the Commission to go through the Council of Ministers and then through the European Parliament, it takes a long time. So you have a dissociation between the system itself and the citizen. Another question for those supporting the trade bloc would be, a trade bloc is always in favor of the interests of those economies, those national economies that have a more export outlook, would be to participate in such a trade bloc. Can we have a trade bloc without some kind of redistribution of wealth, which is what is happening right now in the European Union? Or is that not the case for those in favor of the trade bloc? Andreas, I don't know whether you want to add.
Well, it appears at the moment that there are no questions anymore in Mainz. Is that correct? All right, so I think from our point of view, we can leave the question and answers.
Okay, so just well, coming back to the question whether European Union institutions are acting or deciding to slowly, I think it's very hard if you have 28 member states that you can come up with decisions that are far-reaching in a very short time. I mean, this is proven at the national level that some decisions which actually should be taken quicker and be decided upon just take ages. So I think it's kind of a bureaucratic characteristic that it will take time. There are possibly quite a lot of possibilities where you can actually improve and accelerate this process. I don't want to go into details, but it should be possible, and this brings me to my second point. In order to improve the picture of the European Union, that it actually does something for the citizens when they not only want it, but when they need it, basically, certain decisions. So with concerns to that PR, I'm working in the PR business at the moment, so I would be happy to have the European Union as a client. But jokes aside, I think the European Union can improve on this point very much, and it should be more proactive in presenting their views instead of just rather reacting to bad national coverage. So this would be one point where I could actually say, well, we have something to say, this is our opinion, not always have their speakers saying, well, yeah, we started for this and this didn't work out and there's some truth in this and that national coverage. So I think the European Union could be more active on this communication part, and with good communications they definitely could just decrease any hindrances that exist for ordinary European citizens to become engaged and concerned with European politics and such. Yeah, and that's
all right, great. Thank you, Konstantin.
Should we go to Malcolm?
Yes, fine. Can do that.
Yeah, concerning your question that a trade bloc is always in favor of interests and larger countries have an advantage, or countries that have a strong expert there have an advantage. We're not only talking about external trade, but we're also talking about intra-EU trade. And there is a lot of intra-EU trade going on in the European Union. So there's an advantage also for the smaller countries that they can have advantages of not having trade barriers like tariffs and quotas. They can purchase products to cheaper prices compared to products they have to buy from other countries where they have tariffs and quotas. We have a free market, and of course there is competition in this market, but the trade bloc creates opportunities by the liberalization of this market. And this is, I guess, something where smaller companies can also take an advantage from. So,
all right, great, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mainz. Nikos, you have anything?
I'm totally covered, but I can answer to your question about it will be from first answer. So we are all talking about the democratic deficit. Yes, there is a democratic deficit. This is undoubtable. Nobody doubts that there is strong. But how can we solve this? We cannot solve this by looking at it and saying, oh, this is the problem. Okay, propose something, suggest something. And federalism, I think that it is the proposal, the suggestion that because it says that the identity of Europe citizenship must be created. We must give emphasis on a Europe citizen who has the power to decide about the future of this place. And we must build the structures in order to let him feel that he could change things in Europe, let him decide and vote directly about the president of the Commission, let's say. These are some first steps. Or give more power to the EU Parliament. These are some first steps. We can talk about further steps, but I don't want to be an idealist, so I stop here.
Okay, so we have another question here. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you're saying that like the creation of a European Federation will be kind of a solution to the democratic deficit, but don't you think like a federation where there are countries that produce more and therefore give more to the federation will feel that they have the right to have like bigger control over the federation and then actually make this democratic deficit even worse? Like create a federation where like countries will not be equally represented because like they don't have the same populations, they don't have like the same production, like don't you think?
How United States cope with this problem? They have created two parliaments, a parliament based on the inequalities between the states and a parliament represented equally from each state.
I'm sorry, we have to wrap this up. Anyway, the United States is not the only paradigm. So far we have managed in Europe to create our own narrative about our way towards unity, and we will never be able to create, maybe we won't be able to create a European union of states, but we are moving towards that path. And Nikos rightly mentioned that in the next European elections next May, we will be able to not only to vote for the large political parties, but to know beforehand the proposals each one of those large political parties has about the leadership of the European Commission. So step by step, we are maybe moving closer towards this political union. Anyway, this is a very tough debate. It's not easy to it's true that Euroscepticism is on the rise, and maybe this will create an adverse trend in favor of more unity within Europe. And it's true that political problems as they stand right now within the monetary union are posing those questions even more pressingly so. But we will see what the future gives us. I invite you all to follow up on these debates, and do please debate between you and with your other European friends, and this will maybe make the next European elections more substantial for the issues and the challenging we are facing. So thank you all here in Thessaloniki. Thank you all back there in Mainz. I think we have concluded very successfully. Thank you, Andreas, for cooperating in this exercise, and special thanks to the University of Mainz, to the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, and to the Goethe Institute here in Thessaloniki, and of course the International Debate Education Association. Thank you all. Bye-bye.